The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Portland Municipal Center as Detective Nina Caldwell strode through the revolving doors, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor. She adjusted her Hermes scarf and glanced at her reflection in the lobby's glass panels, every blonde hair in place, makeup flawless, uniform pressed to perfection. Nina had cultivated this image carefully over her 12 years on the force, polished, precise, and utterly untouchable. She'd learned early that respect wasn't given freely to women in law enforcement. You had to take it, demand it, and never show weakness. Her methods were aggressive, her interrogations legendary, and her conviction rate spoke for itself. Some called her ruthless. Nina preferred effective. The elevator ride to the third floor felt longer than usual. She'd been summoned to a meeting with the new deputy chief of operations, some bureaucrat named Davis who'd transferred in from Sacramento last month. Probably wanted to lecture her about excessive force complaints again. Nina rolled her eyes. Civilians never understood what it took to keep the streets safe. The deputy chief's office was modest compared to the previous occupants, fewer plaques, simpler furniture, and a photograph of a dark-skinned woman with kind eyes, and 2 young children displayed prominently on the desk. Nina barely glanced at it before dropping into the chair across from the empty desk. She checked her watch. 3 minutes late. Typical administrative incompetence. When the door finally opened, Nina didn't bother standing. Deputy Chief Davis, I assume. Nina Caldwell. I have a suspect interview in 40 minutes, so let's make this quick. The woman who entered was younger than Nina expected, mid-40s perhaps, with natural hair pulled back in an elegant bun and calm, assessing eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore her uniform with quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Detective Caldwell. Her voice was measured, professional. Thank you for coming. I wanted to meet with all senior detectives personally. Have a seat. I'm already sitting, Nina said, checking her phone. Deputy Chief Davis settled into her chair, her expression unreadable. I've been reviewing case files and personnel records. Your closure rate is impressive, 78% over the past 3 years. Highest in the division, Nina said without looking up. I also noticed 17 complaints filed against you for excessive force, intimidation of witnesses, and procedural violations. 13 were dismissed, 4 are still under review. Nina finally made eye contact. 17 complaints, 200 solved cases. You do the math, Deputy Chief. I get results. Results matter, Davis agreed. But so does how we achieve them. This department serves the community, Detective. We're not at war with the people we're sworn to protect. Nina's jaw tightened. Here it comes, the idealistic speech about hearts and minds. With all due respect, Deputy Chief, when someone's breaking into your home, or assaulting your family, you don't want officer-friendly showing up with a smile and a handshake. You want someone who'll end the threat. I want someone who'll end the threat legally and ethically, Davis corrected. We're done here for now, Detective. But I'll be monitoring your cases closely. Dismissed. Nina stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She'd worked too hard and too long to be lectured by some paper pusher, who'd probably never made a real collar in her life. Sacramento, she thought dismissively. Probably spent her whole career behind a desk. 3 weeks later, Nina responded to what should have been a routine disturbance call at Riverside Park. A woman had been reported causing a scene near the tennis courts, acting erratically and refusing to leave, according to dispatch. When Nina arrived, she found a slender black woman in running clothes sitting on a bench, her phone pressed to her ear. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, but hardly dangerous. I need you to end your call and come with me, Nina announced, her hand resting on her belt. The woman held up one finger, wait, and continued speaking softly into the phone. I know, baby. Mommy will be home soon. Yes, I promise. I love you too. Nina's patience evaporated. I said end the call. Now. The woman lowered her phone, her expression weary. Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just catching my breath after my run. I wasn't causing any. Someone reported you acting erratically and refusing to leave public property. That's disturbing the peace. I need to see identification. I don't have my ID with me. I'm running. My name is Rebecca Davis, and no ID. That's a problem. Nina stepped closer, her voice hardening. You have 2 options. Come voluntarily to the station for questioning, or I can arrest you for failure to identify and obstruction. Rebecca's eyes widened. This is absurd. I'm a deputy chief with the Portland Police Department. Check your, Nina laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. Right? And I'm the mayor. You know how many people try that line. Let's go. She reached for her handcuffs. Wait. Rebecca pulled out her phone again. I can call my office, they'll verify. Put the phone down. Nina's hand moved to her weapon. Drop it now. Rebecca froze, her phone clattering to the pavement. Please, just listen. My name is Rebecca Davis. My husband is Marcus Davis, I don't care if your husband is the Pope. You're under arrest for failure to identify, obstruction, and now resisting arrest. Nina grabbed Rebecca's arm roughly, wrenching it behind her back. You're making a serious mistake, Rebecca said quietly, even as Nina clicked the handcuffs tight enough to hurt. The only mistake is yours, lady. You should have cooperated. Nina marched her to the patrol car, ignoring the small crowd that had gathered. Several people held up phones, recording. Let them, Nina thought. This was textbook policing, a suspicious person refusing to identify herself. Any review board would clear her. She shoved Rebecca into the back seat with unnecessary force. Watch your head, she said mockingly, after Rebecca's shoulder had already hit the door frame. The drive to the station took 15 minutes. Nina spent it lecturing her prisoner about respect for authority and the importance of carrying identification. Rebecca said nothing, her jaw set, her eyes fixed on something far away. At the station, Nina processed her arrest with casual efficiency. She'd done this thousands of times. Fingerprints, photographs, personal effects inventory. When Rebecca asked again to make a phone call, Nina made her wait, 20 minutes, then 30, then an hour. Comfortable back there? Nina asked through the holding cell bars, her smile cold. Maybe next time you'll think twice about mouthing off to police officers. Rebecca met her gaze steadily. Detective Caldwell, I strongly suggest you check with your superiors before this goes any further. My superiors will back me 100%. They always do. Nina returned to her desk to complete the paperwork, feeling satisfied. Another arrest, another problem solved. She was filling out the obstruction charge when Sergeant Mike Reeves appeared beside her desk, his face pale. Caldwell. The chief wants to see you. Now. Which chief? I'm busy, Chief Jameson. Top floor. Right now. His voice had an edge she'd never heard before. Nina's confidence wavered slightly, but she straightened her shoulders and headed for the elevator. Chief Jameson rarely involved himself in individual arrests. This was probably about her closure rate, maybe a commendation. The chief's office occupied the entire northwest corner of the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Jameson stood with his back to the door, his imposing frame silhouetted against the skyline. Beside him stood Deputy Chief Davis, not Rebecca, but a tall man with graying temples and eyes currently burning with barely contained fury. Nina's stomach dropped. Detective Caldwell, Chief Jameson said without turning around. Do you know who you arrested this afternoon? A woman refusing to identify herself in a public park, sir. Acting erratically, that woman, the chief interrupted, finally facing her, is Deputy Chief Rebecca Davis. Wife of Deputy Chief Marcus Davis, who's standing right here. She's also the officer you met with 3 weeks ago in her office. The world seemed to tilt. Nina's mouth went dry. Sir, she didn't look. I mean, she wasn't in uniform, so you arrest every black woman you encounter, who isn't wearing a uniform. Marcus Davis spoke for the first time, his voice deadly quiet. You humiliated my wife, injured her wrist with excessive cuff pressure, denied her the right to make a phone call for over an hour, and processed her like a common criminal, despite her repeated attempts to identify herself. I was following protocol, Nina stammered. She had no ID, she told you her name, Jameson cut in. She told you her position. She tried to show you her phone with department credentials. You chose not to verify any of it, because you'd already decided she was guilty of something. She was sitting on a bench. Marcus's control was slipping. Catching her breath after a run in the park where she runs 3 times a week. And you somehow decided that warranted arrest. Nina's mind raced through the encounter, seeing it now through different eyes. The exhaustion in Rebecca's face. She'd probably just finished a 5-mile run in summer heat. The phone call, to her children, telling them she'd be home soon. The quiet dignity even as Nina had manhandled her. Sir, I made a judgment call based on the complaint I received. A complaint we've now traced to Mrs. Henderson, an elderly resident who calls us twice a week about suspicious people in the park, Jameson said. All of whom happen to be black or Hispanic. This should have taken you 3 minutes to verify and clear. Instead, you escalated to arrest without cause. You have authority to use reasonable judgment. Jameson's voice finally rose. You have authority to treat every citizen with basic dignity and verify information before destroying someone's afternoon and their faith in this department. Nina felt her career crumbling beneath her feet. I want to apologize. I didn't recognize Deputy Chief Davis, and don't apologize to me, Marcus said coldly. You're going to apologize to my wife, personally and publicly. Then you're going on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Sir, please, you're suspended, effective immediately, Jameson said. Badge and service weapon. Now. Nina fumbled with trembling fingers to unclip her badge. 12 years of service, reduced to this moment of humiliation. She placed both items on Jameson's desk with a metallic clink that seemed to echo in the silent office. May I see Deputy Chief Davis? To apologize? No, Marcus said flatly. She's at the hospital getting her wrist x-rayed and documenting her injuries. You'll apologize in writing, which will become part of the official record and public filing. Nina nodded numbly, unable to speak. Dismissed, Jameson said. Security will escort you out. The walk through the station was the longest of Nina's life. Officers she'd worked with for years suddenly found reasons to look away. The whispers started before she even reached the elevator. By tomorrow, everyone would know. She drove home in a daze, her mind replaying every moment of the arrest. How had she not seen it? But she knew the answer. She hadn't wanted to see it. She'd made assumptions based on what? Location? Appearance? Some unconscious bias she'd always denied having. The worst part was realizing this wasn't the first time. How many other people had she treated with the same casual dismissal, the same immediate assumption of guilt? How many complaints had she brushed off as criminals trying to game the system? For 3 days, Nina stayed in her apartment, ignoring calls and texts. The news broke on the second day. Senior detective arrests deputy police chief without cause. The video from bystanders' phones went viral, Nina's aggressive stance, her hand on her weapon, Rebecca's calm attempts to explain, all captured in high definition. The court of public opinion was swift and merciless. Past complaints against Nina were dug up and re-examined. A pattern emerged that she'd been blind to. A disproportionate number of her arrests involved minorities, and a disturbing percentage of those charges were later dismissed. On the 4th day, Chief Jameson called her personally. Detective Caldwell, the administrative review has concluded. We're recommending your termination. Nina closed her eyes. She'd expected this, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. I understand, sir. However, Jameson continued, Deputy Chief Rebecca Davis has made an unusual request. She wants to meet with you before any final decisions are made. Are you willing? Hope flickered, small and fragile. Yes, sir. Absolutely. They met in a neutral conference room at the police union building. Rebecca arrived punctually, her right wrist wrapped in a light bandage. Nina stood immediately, the apology she'd rehearsed 1,000 times suddenly inadequate. Deputy Chief Davis, sit down, detective. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. She took the chair across the table, studying Nina with those same calm, assessing eyes from their first meeting. Nina sat, her hands twisting in her lap. I'm deeply sorry. There's no excuse for what I did. I made assumptions, I escalated when I should have verified, and I treated you with a complete lack of basic human decency and respect. I violated your rights and your dignity, and I damaged the reputation of this department. The words tumbled out, genuine and raw. You deserved better. Everyone I've ever arrested deserved better than the officer I've been. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When Nina finally fell silent, she spoke quietly. Do you know why I asked to meet with you? Nina shook her head, afraid to hope. Because I've read your file, detective. All of it. Your academy performance was exceptional. Your first 5 years on the force, you had 0 complaints. You were known for building community relationships, for your patience with victims. What happened? Nina's throat tightened. She'd spent 3 days asking herself the same question. My partner was killed, she said finally. 6 years ago. We responded to a domestic violence call, and the suspect had a gun we didn't know about. Thomas died before the ambulance arrived. I remember that incident, Rebecca said softly. Officer Thomas Chen. He was a good man. He was my best friend. Nina's voice cracked. After that, I changed. I decided I needed to be harder, tougher, more aggressive. I convinced myself that hesitation killed Thomas, that compassion was weakness. I stopped seeing people and started seeing threats. She looked up, meeting Rebecca's eyes. But that's not an excuse. It's just an explanation. I became exactly the kind of officer I used to hate. Do you know what I was doing in that park, detective? Nina shook her head. I was having a panic attack. Rebecca's admission hung in the air. My son has autism. He'd had a difficult morning, a full meltdown before school. I ran to the park to clear my head, because I was afraid I'd cry at work and show weakness, just like you've been afraid to show weakness for 6 years. She leaned forward. We all carry trauma, Detective Caldwell. The question is whether we let it make us cruel, or whether we use it to develop empathy. Nina felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't deserve your compassion. Maybe not. But I'm giving it anyway, because that's the officer I choose to be. Rebecca slid a folder across the table. This is a proposal. You'll be terminated from your current position, that's non-negotiable. Too much damage has been done. But I've arranged for you to enter a rehabilitation program for officers who've lost their way. 6 months of intensive training on community policing, implicit bias, de-escalation, and trauma-informed law enforcement. If you complete it successfully, you can apply to return to the force in a probationary capacity. Nina stared at the folder, unable to believe what she was hearing. Why would you do this for me? Because I believe people can change if they are willing to do the work. Because I've seen officers come back from this kind of edge, and become better at their jobs than they ever were before. And because. Rebecca paused, choosing her words carefully. Because my son is black and autistic, and someday he might have an encounter with police. I need to believe that the officer he meets will see him as a human being deserving of dignity, not as a threat to be neutralized. I'm investing in that future, Detective. The question is whether you're willing to invest in it too. Nina's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The program was rigorous, more than she deserved, more than she'd dared hope for. I'll do it, she whispered. Whatever it takes. I'll become the officer I should have been all along. Then we have an understanding. Rebecca stood, extending her hand. This is your second chance, Detective. Most people don't get one. Use it wisely. Nina took her hand carefully, mindful of the injured wrist. Thank you. I won't waste it. 6 months later, Nina stood once again in a conference room, this time facing a review board. She'd completed every module of the rehabilitation program, attended therapy twice a week, and volunteered with community organizations in neighborhoods she'd once policed with aggression rather than understanding. The officer who emerged was different from the one who'd arrested Rebecca Davis. Softer in some ways, stronger in others. She'd learned to sit with discomfort instead of responding with force. She'd confronted biases she didn't know she had. She'd listened, really listened, to the communities she'd harmed. When Deputy Chief Rebecca Davis entered the room as part of the review board, Nina felt her heart skip. This was it, her future decided in the next hour. The questioning was thorough and fair. They asked about specific scenarios, tested her knowledge of new protocols, and challenged her understanding of the changes she claimed to have made. Finally, Chief Jameson spoke. Detective Caldwell, why should we let you wear this badge again? Nina took a breath, choosing her words carefully. You shouldn't, sir. Not because of who I was. You should only consider it because of who I'm committed to becoming. She looked at each board member in turn. I can't undo the harm I caused. I can't give back the dignity I took from people who deserved better. But I can spend the rest of my career trying to balance the scales, not through arrests and statistics, but through genuine service. Through seeing every person I encounter as someone's child, someone's parent, someone worthy of respect. Her eyes found Rebecca's. Someone like Deputy Chief Davis, who showed me more grace than I deserved and gave me a chance to be better. The board deliberated for 20 minutes. When they returned, Nina stood on shaking legs. Detective Caldwell, Jameson said, you'll be reinstated on a 2-year probationary status. You'll work under direct supervision, your cases will be reviewed monthly, and any complaint will be taken with utmost seriousness. You'll continue weekly counseling and quarterly training. Welcome back to the Portland Police Department. Nina's knees nearly buckled with relief. Thank you, sir. All of you. I won't let you down. As the room cleared, Rebecca approached her. Congratulations, Detective. I owe you everything, Nina said. How can I ever pay it forward? Rebecca interrupted. The next time you see an officer starting to go down the path you took, intervene. Mentor younger officers who are struggling. Build bridges with the communities you once alienated. That's how you repay this second chance, by making sure fewer people need one. Nina nodded, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. It was heavy, but it no longer felt crushing. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why do you do this job? After everything, after what I did to you, after all the other officers who've probably treated you similarly, why stay? Rebecca smiled, sad but genuine. Because I remember why I became a cop in the first place. Not to wield power, but to protect people. Not to win battles, but to build trust. Someone has to believe this job can be done right, Detective. Someone has to be the example. She adjusted her badge, the metal catching the light. Now it's your turn to be that example for someone else. 2 years later, Nina walked through the same park where everything had changed. The tennis courts were occupied, children played on swings, and runners made their loops around the paved path. She came here once a month now, a deliberate reminder of her worst moment, and her greatest opportunity. She'd been fully reinstated 6 months ago, her probation completed successfully. Her caseload was different now, more community outreach, less aggressive pursuit. Her conviction rate was lower, but the quality of her work was higher. Fewer complaints, more commendations for community service. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca, coffee tomorrow. Want to discuss the new training program? Nina smiled and typed back, absolutely. Thank you again. She pocketed her phone and continued her walk, greeting neighbors by name, stopping to help an elderly man with his grocery bags, taking time to explain directions to a confused tourist. This was the job she'd signed up for all those years ago. This was the officer Thomas would have wanted her to be. This was the person she was still becoming, one choice at a time. The badge on her belt caught the afternoon sun, and Nina remembered Rebecca's words. Someone has to believe this job can be done right. She believed it now. And every day, she worked to prove it true.